Hi everyone, this is Tim. Welcome to North and South Podcasts. Just me speaking this week. This is a politics podcast, I think, and it's something that I've been meaning to address for a while. Please know that your support is really important, and the more listens you give this podcast, the more likes, the more subscriptions on both YouTube and Spotify. If you can donate the price of a cup of coffee once a month through coffee.com in the podcast notes, sharing it with others, it all helps the project move forward because I want to get more involved, getting people on, getting involved in the community. If you want to get on board and help out and support in any way, I'm currently looking to expand and deliver more in the community as well, using community funding projects, etc., etc. Please get in touch if you want to take this a stage further with me and contribute to good debate and good work in the community. Hope you are all okay. Now today we're going to discuss a word which is a few years old, but I keep hearing it everywhere and I don't really know what it means, and it's the word woke or wokism, which basically means awareness, to be aware of things. And in particular, it's used as a derogatory term to describe people who are interested in social justice or racial issues. Now, it's part of this kind of culture war, binary politics at the moment, where anyone who comes from a particular viewpoint that someone on the right, the populist right, doesn't like, basically all those people get considered woke. Although it's not something that I would consider maybe a sensible conservative to use. Many sensible conservatives, for want of a better phrase in these dangerous times, do use the language of wokeism for culture war issues to gain votes, etc. So in the past, instead of wokeism, we might have used the term political correctness, which is when you say a firefighter instead of a fireman, for example, because you want to open up that industry to all gender identifications, etc. Wokeism is becoming more widespread, and it seems to be part of this binary politics where all bad, if you're coming from the right or a particular part of the right wing, the conservatives, anyone who you disagree with is called woke or wokist, therefore is an enemy and needs to be undermined or dismissed. You've now got the ridiculous situation where the BBC, which is effectively quite a conservative organisation that pays lip service to like the two parties, the structures of democracy, and will look at issues affecting minorities, etc., and put someone on a programme who might have learning difficulties, etc. Now that's all woke as well for these dangerous right-wing types. Now, woke in the UK kind of just means a lefty, so someone from the left or the liberal or someone who isn't a traditional conservative. And in the United States, it refers to anyone who was liberal or even a Democrat, basically someone who was not a Republican, although I'm sure that some Republicans who are critical of Donald Trump have also been getting called woke in recent years. Just want to say as well, Russell Brand, I listened to a couple of Russell Brand podcasts. One's called Under the Skin, which is really good. And he's done one called Stay Free. What has happened to Russell Brand? Unbelievable what that guy's done. He's gone really far to the right, like defending Trump, etc. But anyway, that's another story. Wokeism seems to be something that is developed from the language of what might be called the populist right. And a sensible conservative might not bandy the word woke to refer to enemies, etc. But it's something which is tied to the more right-wing populist brand of right-wing politics. It's also a culture war term, so people like Jordan Peterson, Nigel Farage will use it. And although Sunak might use it, he's not really someone who is a populist, Richie Sunak in the UK. Sunak seems to be like a traditional conservative who just is in charge of a very divided party, controlled by minorities within that party, who's inherited a terrible, terrible, terrible situation after 13 years of conservative rule, the mess of Johnson and Truss, and the earlier austerity measures, and he seems to be really struggling. And the Conservatives have said that they're going to use that kind of culture war, anti-woke stuff to try and reduce their losses, or even try and win at the next general election. So we'll see what happens there. So populism, what do I mean by the word populism? Populism is not popular. Popular means that like people like it and a majority likes it. Populism is when you try to be popular by reducing politics to short, understandable sayings with cut through. So you refer to all your enemies or the BBC or the educational establishment as the blob. You know, when you refer to all your problems in the US perspective as like, we need to build a wall to stop Mexicans and Hispanics coming in. The phrase like, get Brexit done, and then you don't get Brexit done, and the oven-ready deal which you said you had doesn't actually exist, and you cause a Brexit disaster in Johnson's case. It might also refer to things like take back control, which was used during Brexit again. And what have we done? We give more power to ministers. Parliament has been undermined, so we haven't actually reinvigorated our democratic processes. We've undermined them, and we've actually got less control over things than we did in the past because we're poorer and we haven't got as much global impact, which was reflected recently in Rishi Sunak not really being acknowledged at the G20 summit. So what populism does, and right-wing culture war does, and anti-wokism does, is it tries to wind people up and appeal to binary trench warfare, this idea of us and them. And it's washed through with fear of the other. So you blame the foreigner, the immigrant, the wokery or the wokist. So you blame like a group of people for all the ills in society and imply that if you could just get rid of those, society would be perfect. It's arguable if there are any benefits to these policies, but it's just what might be called right-wing identity politics, where you say, I identify as anti-wokist, whatever that means, it's an umbrella term, to define yourself and the group that you belong to, like the oppressed normal people of the UK, whatever that means. Anti-wokism also rejects experts unless it suits them. This kind of populist right-wing rejection of experts that we saw with Brexit. And like they disagree with things like climate change and say, all these experts, they're not right. They're all controlled by China and they're in on this massive conspiracy, etc. I won't go into conspiracy thinking today, but there is a lot of link between conspiracy thinking and this kind of anti-woke agenda. Economic considerations are secondary to identity politics. So anti-wokists and populist right-wingers will do things that actually have a damaging impact on the economy, which they used to say they were strong on, if it means identity politics is asserted, like the interests of the white male minority, or whatever the minority is, or sorry, the oppressed majority, what Richard Nixon might have called the silent majority during the Vietnam War, who were pro-war. It's also a catch-all term, this anti-wokist agenda. So to the Nazis, it was the Jewish Bolsheviks, the idea that anyone to the east was a communist and a Jew, no matter what the facts are on the ground. When you go into the east, you treat them all like they're Jewish Bolsheviks, they're all the same, even though there's lots of different groups there, and there's lots of different racial groups there, there's lots of different political groups there. You just bandy all your enemies as one big enemy that you need to get rid of. And if you are woke, you are the enemy that the right identify as. Now, I'm going to critique here identity politics on the left as well, where you say, as a particular person in a particular group, I have these opinions and I assert the rights of that group above all other things. Now, if that's what people want to do, that's great, but we shouldn't take it too far to the point where Matt Damon, during the Me Too revelations to do with sexist behaviour towards many women in particular workplaces and throughout society, Matt Damon said, I'm on board with the Me Too movement, but we need to make sure that, we don't start blaming people. There's like a spectrum here and we don't go ballistic trying to incriminate everyone. And he was like rounded on and said, you as a man shouldn't be saying these things, etc. And you had all these people on the left who then rounded on Matt Damon for coming out with a statement of support, but just saying that there may be nuances in these kind of agreements. Absolutely, all these arguments, absolutely ridiculous. Also, you get like people on the left who, the Ukrainians are all Nazis dating back to World War II, and they want to sign up for NATO, and Russia's right to invade and assert its sovereignty in the region. You get people who come at you with these extreme opinions because of the group they're in, and they make out that anyone who disagrees with them is like the victim of the mainstream media or is under the influence of Western propaganda. And again, there's no nuance or give or take or compromise with some of these groups. So the ones on the left can also be very, very terrifying, where they identify with a group, and anyone who thinks differently to them, they want to destroy as well. I just want to make that clear, that it works both ways, although from my perspective, the right is the big, big problem. I just want to say also, like, if you're so, like, if people are concerned about, like, anti-wokery, whatever that means, is it woke to say that LGBT rights exist and that gender dysphoria is real? Is that woke to say that? Because if it is, then I'm woke. Some groups don't do as well as others in society for a range of complex structural and non-structural issues. Is it okay to say that? Does that make me woke? Then, yeah, sign me up. I'm woke. We need to look at how we can make societies fairer and more equal. Does that make me woke, saying something like that? To say that freedom of speech comes with responsibility, does that make me woke for saying something like that? Sign me up. Is mentioning Martin Luther King Jr. in an argument, does that mean that you're woke because you use someone like him? If so, sign me up. And would a TV programme with a gay character be called woke? Because if so, then I'm woke. Sign me up. So this kind of wokest term that's thrown around the Daily Mail and conservatives, etc., and even some people who are on the centre because they're not happy with certain people on the left for the reasons that I've mentioned earlier with the Ukraine war and some aspects of what Matt Damon said. It is a problem, and it seeks to stifle debate, to oversimplify things, and to make out that anyone who doesn't agree with a pure approach that you have, anyone who doesn't agree with that is an enemy. So reject this use of the woke label, folks, to label people in a negative respect. Look at the nuances of the argument. Reject the culture war where we argue over silly things and don't look at some of the big, big important things that affect everyone. Get educated and get real. So that's my little spin on wokery. And yeah, sign me up. If it means I'm not ignorant and stupid and I'm aware, people want to call me woke, then so be it. Thank you.